there's a difference between doing the sort of checklist approach to identity, where you just have a list of things and you check it off, and actually looking at the context and looking at how it was used, and doing what I think both Salvatore and Gert advocate as a more entangled and material culture sharing approach, where you do go to context and you try to look at how the things were actually being used rather than just ticking off a box.
Yes. Papadopoulos, regarding the question of the term warrior graves of Professor Lawrence, I can say that until a better term will be found, like aristocratic or elite graves, we can use this term, warrior graves, and it will happen like the term barbarian were. Now it's out. I hope that in the near future we shall have another term quite suitable to the barriers of dead, which are accompanied by weapons of different kinds.
I'm going to be sure that we give Professor Van Wijngaarden enough time to make his general comments, but I do want to ask the questions, particularly from our Italian friends from the Occidents, with respect to Mike Galati's question about frequency. It seems to me that for people living in the Adriatic, the Ionian seas, and people living even in the Tyrrhenian and the southern Tyrrhenian seas, it was completely natural for them to look back and forth to and within that region, as natural for them as it was for people in the Aegean to look to Anatolia or to look to the Eastern Mediterranean. I wonder if it's helpful to consider the extent to which we may bring deep biases and imbalances in the way we look at things because of the notion of ex oriente lux. I don't mean to downplay the importance of Egypt and the Near East, but rather if you're in Sicily, or if you're in Pantelleria, or if you are in the heel of Italy, or if you're up and along the Adriatic coast, Egypt and the Eastern Mediterranean may not have been of such interest to you as the opportunities to interact and to engage in trading and extraction of all kinds of resources, from metals to animals and other things. I don't know if that's helpful, but it seems to me that what I take away from this is that that it's useful to reorient the way we think about these things, and to make those movements more natural and less, as someone who studies the Mycenaean Palace is so what? Maybe some of these people didn't really care about what was going on in Mycenae, but they really cared about what was happening in the Western Peloponnesus and among the Ionian Islands.
To make a comparison with the Orientalizing period, for example, there was obviously a enduring interest in the East from even the Italian peninsula, so the East is very attractive. The East provides so much in terms of all the precious goods and so on, but also visual material, iconographic material, and I think that if we judge from that period, if we compare, I think there's something else. There's just something else that prevented them from getting in the later Hellenic period. But there's also the interest that obviously the West showed to Western Greece showed to Italy in the later phases that they didn't show before. The Western Greece did not have a lot of Italian ornaments, for example, coming before the before we went to like 3C, I think. There's a scatter of disorders across Greece, of Italian problems. And yet at the end of 3B, or 3B and 3C, we see more interest in that stuff, that is the opposite current. I don't know if that makes sense.
I apologize if I don't work in Italy or I'm not Italian, but I think bias definitely does exist, and I can cite this from experience of working in the East, where the desire in both looking at the Philistines in the 12th century and Cyprus in the 12th century or even 13th century, and they're both connected, is to see every new introduction or to emphasize everything that's Aegean and not to look at what's Cypriot or Canaanite or Anatolian and all these other influences are there. You would think it was only Mycenaean, and in fact, it's really not. So I do think we tend to emphasize what we're looking for at the time.
Thank you. I'm Sarah, and I just would like to remind that one of the aspects that the work of Marco Battelli and Lucia Jones on possible analysis focused on, I'm only talking about possible. And what we can see about this huge amount of finds in Italy, what was more important was not the imports, but the huge impact of presence of potters from the Aegean background, staying there and all over Italy, and at least in all the southern Adriatic and Ionian arc, having a huge impact on pottery manufacture, so technological transfer, first adoption of the wheel and painted pottery and voila and all the other things, and that was also to some extent arrived to the local production of the impasto. Sometimes the handmade branches, we have examples of wheel made. So there was a close interaction of people living there and adopting new technology. And so this is maybe, I'm not saying that it's not, this is okay,
concerning the frequency of the aerial from the Messinian world of potters, of merchants, or whatever, we don't have any traces in settlements or in necropolis of Aegean tombs, except for Thapsos to some extent, but Thapsos is another problem. So we think that the staying of potters could be temporary, just temporary, and then, but what is important for us is to observe this new way of production of pottery that is established in Italy, starting from the middle of the 3 to say 14th century BC, and then increase in the 13th and 12th century BC of local manufacture of Aegean type pottery with a great variability. It's not all the same. And in this production probably could be involved also local people, native people in workshop that temporarily or not were established in local settlements.
Yeah, of course, I would agree with the other speakers who said that the quantification is difficult, but the studies that have been undertaken on the second half of the second millennium demonstrate that something is possible. We just heard that in terms of quantifying, and we have to remind ourselves of the inequality, of the imbalance of our archaeological record when it comes to all the centuries that we were looking at in the conference. There was a huge discussion about the Cetina network and whatever was going on there, but we have no archaeometric data at hand in order to know what was moving, if only the knowledge to do this kind of pottery, and we know that it's different in every region. Whereas we have now a lot of archaeometric data on the second half of the second millennium. And in the middle of these two phenomena, in the first half of the second millennium, we barely have any archaeological hard evidence to talk about the context between both sides of the Ionian and Adriatic Sea. So that's hampering very much our diachronical ability to go into these matters.
Thank you. I think I'll cut this off here just so that I can let Professor Vingarden speak. It raises lots of good questions that I'm sure he can pick up on. So let me invite him to the podium to take over.